Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Baby Lock, who are excited to offer you a chance to win a dream sewing room this holiday season. Enter to win your choice of a Baby Lock Solaris 2 sewing and embroidery machine or a Venture multi-needle embroidery machine and qualifying Koala Studio. You'll also receive a Madeira thread assortment and a variety of Classe needle packs. Visit babylock.com/holiday-guide to enter to win today.
Hi, welcome to Sewing with Threads, the monthly podcast by the staff of Threads magazine. I'm your host, editorial director Sarah McFarland, and I'm joined by our senior technical editor, Carol Frasia. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Sarah.
And our managing editor, production, Janine Clegg. Hi, Janine.
How are you?
Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you guys too.
Today, we're going to chat about organizing your sewing supplies and share some of our tips and ideas. And I also started some threads in our forum over at threadsmagazine.com, so you can visit there and share your ideas and learn from the rest of the sewing community. We also have free and insider articles on the website specifically about conserving fabrics and garments. So I personally was thinking about this topic because I live in a small space and I have been confined to the small space quite a bit. And it became important to me to try and purge some of my sewing stuff. But when it got right down to it, I realized that if I organized it intelligently, I would be able to keep a lot more, and it would be easier for me to find things when I work on a project.
And you know what? It's funny because I think a lot of people think, I don't have time to organize. I just need to do the projects. But in the end, you do save more time by organizing, getting yourself together first, because you're not wasting the time looking for items or trying to figure out, do I have this in my stash or not? Because as you know, all of us do accumulate quite a bit of stuff. And sometimes you lose track of what you own.
Exactly. That's what happened to me when I was going through my stash. I realized I had a lot more supplies than I thought I did. And so I will just start off with a tip that I realized. This is something that I read in Threads, and I just started to apply it. It's that the little terry cloth ponytail holders, they're for little tiny girls. They just hold a little tiny bit of hair. They are great for putting around bobbins that are still threaded so that they don't become unwound. And I have many bobbins. I don't like to unwind them because I frequently will return to a thread color. And those little terry ponytail holders are the only thing that I've found that sufficiently cover the thread so that it doesn't unwind.
I've got a few things that are about efficiency, not necessarily organization, although some are organization. For example, this summer, my daughter and I were both making a lot of masks, and she got into making bathing suits and lingerie. So we kept on ordering these 10-yard hanks of narrow elastic, and we had so many different kinds and black and white, and it just ended up being just a huge snarl all over the sewing room. And every time you needed some, you had to sort of try to yank out, a foot of this stuff. So I did get a cardboard roll, a tube of some sort. I forget where it came from, and just rolled them all up, neatly on this tube and pin them in place. So now I've got like 10 different kinds that I can get at easily. And I feel so much better about it. This is exactly what you were saying, Janine, that like I'm more efficient, and I just feel better every time I go to get a piece of elastic. I think, well, look at me. I can get my elastic and I don't have to fight it.
And those tubes, you could just use the tube that's left over from, wax paper or tin foil or,
right.
Your plastic wrap. I found that those come in handy. And sometimes they're a little sturdier than other rolls. So if you don't want to spend any money on buying a tube.
Yeah.
That's
this was something from might have had trim on it before. I don't know what it was. Yeah.
No, that's a great idea.
I recently found something that I really like for keeping my fabric stash. I keep most of my fabric under my bed. It's just the largest storage area that I have right now. And I used to keep it in cardboard boxes, and I would label it with, what type of fabric it was. And I would group them sort of seasonally, then sometimes subdivided by knits and wovens. But the cardboard boxes, I would always have to pull them out and dig through them to find anything. I tried a system where I taped swatches on the outside of the box, but those would sometimes get pulled off under the bed. It wasn't great. I found in the grocery store, in the laundry aisle, they had these clear vinyl garment storage bags, and they zip up. They have handles so I can more easily pull them out from under the bed, and I can see in them. So I love those. And they're also of a nice size. They are about 22 or 24 inches wide. So when I have 45-inch fabric, I can kind of fold it in half and then fold it again. And also they're expandable, which is really nice. I was always trying to pack stuff into the cardboard boxes and then they wouldn't close properly, but I feel much better with this system.
You know, that reminds me of a few storage solutions that I've come up with that seem to work for me. I've taken some vintage luggage, like from my mom, you know, so it's really old and, you know, it's pretty looking. So I've store some trims and ribbons in those. And sometimes if the larger piece, because it was a set, store some fabric pieces in it, you know, not large lengths, but, you know, smaller pieces of fabric. And that works really well. And it looks nice because, like you, I have a small space and I like how that works out. And, you know, it's easy to move around. You know, you could also use more modern luggage, the kind that has the wheels on it, because you can take that in and out of a closet and unzip it and take a look at what fabric you have and, you know, put it away at the end of the day, you know. So it's nice to have something that's movable, you know. And then the other thing that you mentioned about having clear plastic, you know, it's nice to be able to see what you have without having to, you know, open it up like the luggage, open it up and then pour through each. If you have a clear storage container, that seems to work better. And if it's nice enough, you can use it as a display. It's a very colorful display, like people put buttons in jars. Yeah. But I like the mason jars, the clear mason jars for storing lots of small things. You know, we end up having a lot of small notions and gadgets that we use. And it's nice to be able to see where they are without leaving them out to collect dust or, you know, get lost, fall off the machine or your work table. Yeah. And I like the clear. Now, glass, of course, is heavier than plastic. So maybe you can find clear plastic containers. Yeah. But I do like ones with lids because then you can move them around and, you know, if they topple over, the stuff doesn't come out. And
oh, definitely. Really, and depending on your workroom or your storage space, if you have a shelf, you can always screw the lid of a jar onto the bottom of the shelf and then, you know, screw the jar into it. So your jars are suspended. I always like to do that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, yeah.
Janine, your tips are so good. I love the suitcase one, except I already keep my furnace filters in my suitcases. So unfortunately that's out. But the jars, I started to use like these big Utz pretzel jars, actually for zippers. I was always putting just buttons in jars. And then, I don't know, it's easy to see the zippers. And as long as I can reach my hand in, I can easily get the one that I want.
Well, I was going to say, just to bring a dose of reality in here and to, and I will admit that this is a little bit shameful. I am not that organized. I use what I call my archaeological stratification method of storing my fabric generally. So the newest is on the top of the pile and the oldest is down on the bottom. And then I do have to kind of dig through. But in a lot of ways, it works for me just because the new stuff is more what I've planned to sew now. And so it's easier for me to get at. And then everything else becomes a surprise in 2 years when I dig a little bit further down. Like, oh, yes, that's right. I had 4 yards of that.
Carol, do you ever worry about getting to the bottom? Or does the bottom become farther and farther away?
It turns into diamonds down there.
Yes.
From the pressure. No, not really. But what happens is that the stuff at the bottom becomes less precious. So sometimes I can just pull things out from there and think, oh, I can play with this now. It's aged enough. I don't have to worry.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I do want to backtrack for just a second because you were talking about storing the zippers in a jar. A while ago, we had, when we did a feature on Ruth Simonowski's sewing space. Ruth lives in Nebraska, and she had a wonderful sewing space, and she shared with us how she does things, how she stores things. And one of the things was storing zippers in a jar. And she told us that she stores the zippers in a clear lidded container, and inside each jar, the zippers are threaded on a wire ring. And then she just pulls the whole thing out and, lays it out, and she can choose which zipper she wants. And then she just puts the whole thing back in again. So it's nice. You can see all your zippers, their lengths, their colors, whatever you need, and then put it back in again. And plus you get a nice display. You have these colorful zippers in a jar. So.
Oh, that's a great tip. I'm going to apply that. I had forgotten about that added twist. Yes. The ring is very smart.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think that I have been trying to do things that are not expensive. I haven't invested in a lot more furniture right now or anything. But now, every time I get groceries, I'm investigating the packaging to see if it will make a good drawer divider. And so when I reorganize my serger table, now it's full of Oreo cookie trays, but they're very handy.
Now we know what she likes.
I was going to say, now you know what I like to eat
her as
too.
a gift.
But when I do buy plastic organizers, I've realized that I really like the ones that have ridges in the lid, so that when the lid is shut, the ridges seal each area of the compartmentalized tray. Because I've had incidents where, I've dropped a tray and beads or small parts have migrated from one section to another. So now I know to look for those ones that have the ridges on the top.
That's a good idea. Yeah. One of the things that I have realized of late, because I keep my stash keeps growing of notions and fabric, that my space for doing my work seems to get smaller and smaller. So I think it's so important to inspire you, to encourage you to sew, to keep you moving along, to have a clear workspace. If it's at the end of the day where you clean up a little bit, but always have your little table wherever you're working cleared so that you're encouraged to continue working on your project. I'm really lucky. I have two places where I work, when I visit family and then at home in my tiny space. But when I'm visiting family, I'm lucky enough to have a work table that has a cutting mat on it. And I can walk around three sides of the table, which is so awesome when you're cutting things out and you're working on something, because sometimes you need to be on the other side.
Yes.
Anyway, it's just wonderful to be able to have that clear space to work on. I try to keep it cleaned off so that I'm encouraged to keep working. And I know that's not necessarily a storage tip, but it's kind of like, well, put your stuff away.
It's those kinds of things that make things just handy and efficient, make a lot of sense. In fact, I went down and looked at my sewing room yesterday, and I was greeted with a table that had one ruler and one rotary cutter on it. And I thought, I'm coming down right away to work because there's room for me now. As though it were outside of my control to keep that clean on my own. I don't know why I think of it that way.
I was going to say, Carol, it sounds as if like some magical elves came. And
I don't know. It must have been me. Yeah. I don't know why, but I was telling Sarah that during this pandemic, I've been doing, a little bit more sewing over certainly the first few months. And I don't have as much good lighting for the hand sewing part of it in my sewing area as I do upstairs. So I tend to bring everything upstairs to do those, finishing touches. And I realized that I was trying to juggle the pin cushion and the pins and the needles and the thread all, in my hands while I was carrying a garment upstairs. So I've established a little caddy that includes all of those things, a little pair of scissors and even a little magnifier if I think I need it. And it's always there, and I can bring it upstairs or downstairs. I've been keeping it in my living room, actually, and it makes it just feel easier to do that stuff. And if I need to do any kind of mending, if somebody needs a button repaired, I don't have to. It's not like my house is huge. It's not that far to go to my sewing room, but there's just enough distance for me to think, I don't want to do that right now. And if it's right there, I
Right.
can do it in 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. If you can make things easier on yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing for me is I have boxes for my patterns, and they've been organized for a long time. So I have like ensemble patterns, dresses, tops, bottoms, and I always thought that they were easily accessible. They were just in these boxes on a bookshelf, but the boxes are stacked. So I have to take out 2 boxes to get at one of them. And I realized that now I've established a sort of an in tray for my patterns. I was taking them out and looking at them a lot more than I thought I did. And then I would just kind of toss them next to the boxes. So I would have a mess of patterns. They would become disorganized. But now that I have an inbox for the patterns, I can stack them there. And the next time I take them out for a nice go through, I put the ones back that I've looked at over the last few weeks.
That's so funny. I just started doing that myself.
Way more space.
No, these are tiny little boxes. They fit into a bookshelf similar to the bookshelf behind me if you're watching this on the video. And the inbox is just a tray. I really didn't realize how many times I would take out my patterns and go through and pull out like 5 or 6 for consideration and, end up not working with them at the moment. Or maybe I just needed to reference a design detail. And just to have a little wire basket where they sit until the next time I'm looking through patterns, it made much less of a mess, my sewing area.
I actually got into that habit just because of work with threads, because, I often take a pattern piece out of an envelope to use for a photo shoot or a video. And I don't take the whole envelope with me necessarily to the shoot just because I'm trying to minimize how much I'm handling. And I needed a place that would corral all those patterns so I could get the pieces back where they belonged. I was finding myself with random sleeves here and there, and I couldn't remember where the envelope was for it.
Let's take a little break here, and then we'll be back to talk about organization some more. If you've been waiting to become a Threads Magazine subscriber, now is the time. We are offering discounted subscription rates throughout December. Go to our website, threadsmagazine.com, to learn more and subscribe now. Janine, you had mentioned having enough room to be able to get around 3 sides of your cutting table. I have in my bedroom area of my apartment, I have like a little bay area, and my folding cutting table, I can just barely eke out like 10 inches around it so I can squeeze over to the other side when I'm cutting. But on one of the walls there, I put a cork board. And it's specifically for only the pattern that I'm working on. And it's been so helpful because I can pin up the pieces for the pattern so I could reference them while I'm making it if I need to, if I missed a marking or something. And they can stay pressed and hanging down. I usually pin up the pattern envelope so I can, reference the fashion illustration or the photo and have the directions up there too. And I love having that designated cork board for just what I'm working on at the time. In the past, I used to use it as a mood board or inspiration board, but it works better as the project board.
Yeah.
I like that because it's all out for you to see, and you're not ironing the pattern pieces more than once. And you get to say, okay, these are all the pieces I need to get down here. I don't have to keep unfolding, and that is an excellent idea. And especially if you don't have a large cutting surface or work surface, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And a lot of times I've been saving various flat pieces of cardboard, sort of like cardboard trays. And if you keep an eye out for them, they turn up here and there. If you buy a number of canned goods, that'll come on a cardboard tray. Or sometimes the big boxes of paper that come to work will come in a cardboard box, and the lid will be good. I use those for project caddies. So the cut and marked pieces of fabric, I can fold them and put it in one of the cardboard caddies, and then slide them under the sofa in the living room, the living room's where I actually sew. So those are nice because then I can separate projects and have something at the ready.
I've been doing a lot more pattern work, I've been really trying to perfect a pants pattern over the last couple of months. And it's not a couple of months of work. It's just, I've been interrupted a lot just so people don't think I'm really that slow or that super perfectionistic, though I am taking a lot of care with this. And I've made a few different versions. But I've discovered my cutting mat is the green kind of cutting mat. And
Oh, yeah.
when I mark the patterns with pencil and then put them on the screen, I can't see the pencil lines very well. So it's really hard for me. It's a lot of strain to really see what I'm doing. So I've started keeping a 6-foot long piece of white kind of craft paper, the kind that comes like rolled up as poster paper. And I just unroll it and weight it down on my board and put the patterns on top. And I mean, it sounds so silly. It's so minimal, but now everything is really clear and easy to see. And I'm getting accurate work done, not worrying. I mean, you can't rotary cut on that, obviously, but a lot of this is, marking with the pencil, transferring from a muslin, or making, other kinds of pattern changes. So I just need to write on it.
That's a great idea. And patterned weights are good. I wanted to suggest that people take a look at having painter's tape in their sewing room, in their stash, stored there in your sewing room. Don't leave it downstairs with all of the other stuff, or in a toolbox, because painter's tape is so helpful in the sewing room. You could tack down your paper with painter's tape, and it's not going to leave a residue. I mean, in most cases, painter's tape does not leave a residue. You do have to check, but painter's tape is good for that, tacking that down, for marking on your machine as a sewing guide if you're having trouble seeing the guides that are already embedded in the throat plate, or if you want to indicate on your fabric like which side is up, if it's directional, or which side has the nap, and you want to just make a mark, or you have a specific direction, you can mark your painter's tape and then put the painter's tape on your fabric without worry. So anyway, that's something to store in your sewing room.
That's a good idea. I should get a roll. That is a very good idea.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, Janine. I've used painter's tape as a seam guide sometimes. With very lightweight fabrics, I can use a little bit of it along the selvage on my table to establish grain line when I'm cutting pieces out if it's a very slippery yardage. Yeah. So I always like to have that on hand. And for taping digital patterns together, sometimes paper tape is great for that, because then I can fold the pattern and press it later without worrying about a plastic-based tape melting, which is always a danger. Yeah,
that's a good point. I just think they're good to have it on hand in the sewing room, that you're not having to run to another room of the house, because then you might end up saying, oh, I'm not going to bother doing that. Let me just use what I have here. And it might not be the right thing. And then you end up, down the road regretting that decision. It's such a small thing, but it makes a difference while you're working.
I just got a second a weighted tape dispenser. I have one that I keep sort of in the office area of the house, but that, I know, again, it doesn't sound like much, but not having to pick up with both hands the tape and unroll the piece, where I can just do it single-handedly and rip off a piece of tape from a weighted thing, it helps a lot with all that taping of the patterns together.
Oh, yes. Carol, is it one of those ones that's probably filled with sand, maybe?
I'm not sure what it is. It was a leftover one from the office. I have absconded with it and brought it home. But it's just, it's just the kind that sits on top of your desk, and you don't have to, it's not the little plastic one. I do like that. And it works as a pattern weight too. You can sort of set it down on what you need. It holds things in place so that when you're taping, things don't shift.
Now, it's funny, Norma, our staff seamstress, I was talking with Norma the other day in her studio about pattern weights. And Norma loves ceramic tiles. So if she can get leftover ceramic tiles, which she's gotten from Fine Home Building before, or if they, a builder or something, if they're available, she likes to get those. And I always wondered about it, because it seems to me like they might have some rough edges. Personally, I like big metal washers from the hardware store. Those are my favorite.
Well, one side of the tile oftentimes is smooth. It depends on what tile. And I like that idea of using the tiles that Norma has, because you can stack them and store them easily. Again, it's a storage issue. So, but yes, the washers are a great idea too. You can always cover them with fabric scraps. So that's nice.
Yes, and I like them too because if you have pegboard, right now I don't have pegboard, but I've had pegboard in the past, and I love a nice piece of pegboard in my sewing room, and you can hang all kinds of notions on it. But you can store the metal washers as pattern weights on a hook on your pegboard.
Yeah.
So Carol had mentioned using how nice it is to have a big tape dispenser, and I don't know why I never thought of this before, but just this year I started using a sort of a desk lazy Susan for my sewing supplies.
Mm-hmm.
It is fabulous because everything is there and I can spin it and see it, and the stuff isn't tucked away in a drawer. So like my small clear ruler, a variety of scissors, chalk, fray check, beeswax, it's all right there in the caddy. So that has, I feel that's made me a lot more efficient.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Do you guys store your pins, different pins on different pin cushions, or do you end up having to they're all different types in one pin cushion? Because this just occurred to me recently that I really need to separate them, because I end up grabbing the wrong pin, like the really fine pin, when I have some heavy fabric that I'm trying to pin together. I'm like, this is crazy. I really need to separate them and make sure that I'm choosing the right pins for the project.
Dean, I have strong opinions about this, so I will express them.
Okay.
I have 3 of the magnetic pin dishes. I like them. The magnets are formed so that the pins will sort of naturally fall with the heads facing the edge of the circle. Yeah, the outer edge. Exactly. Okay. So I do have my pins divided. I think about pin type as well as pin head color to make sure that I use pins that are really visible. So I think I have like for fine fabrics, I have white and navy blue. And then for some thicker fabrics, I have longer pins that are red or yellow headed. And I will have one of the metal dishes pin dishes at my sewing table, one at the ironing board, and then there's one that usually lives by my pinning table. And I found that, in the process of making a garment, the pins kind of migrate usually to the dish at the sewing machine table because you're taking them out as you sew. So when I start a project, I'll pick the pins I want to use, seed each of the dishes, and then if I need to, I'll redistribute the pins during the project process. So that system has worked great for me. I feel like it's a real time saver. I'm always using the right pin, and I'm never having to run back and get the pins from wherever I was using them last. So if you can get yourself set up with a system like that, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's a good pin storage solution. I like it.
Yeah, I think I use pretty much the same pins for everything. I mean, I kind of use a fine pin, but not the kind that bends every time you try to put it in anything. But at one point I bought a package that were a little shorter than I like. I like them 1 1/4 inches, 1 3/8 long. And I got some that are that sort of standard dressmaker size. I don't know what that length is. And I just kind of poured them into the dish with the other ones. And honestly, I keep saying to myself, someday when I'm watching something, Jeopardy or something, I'm going to just sort out those short ones and put them away where they will not bother me anymore, because I really don't enjoy those. And yet I've been too lazy. I just kind of pick them out and think, oh, a short one. And then I use it. That's very biased of me.
Now, isn't it funny how you'll have like 100 good pins and there'll be one bad pin and you never get around it? Maybe it's not even bent. Maybe it's just dull or it has a snag on it or something. And you never get around to throwing out that bad pin. And it will turn up like a bad penny, seems like every time you reach for a pin.
It's true. I have 2 of those harpoon type pins from the office on my pin cushion at home. By this, I'm referring to those kind that are probably meant for pinning together quilts, and they're very big and thick and kind of long. And they just sit there in my pin cushion. And I like having them. Once in a while, you need them for something. But I never need more than 2 or 1. I never really use them that much. So I just kind of keep them in there and sort of try to tuck them under the other pins.
Yes, we joke about those pins. I don't know where they came from. They've been in the office forever, but there are approximately 3,000 giant yellow-headed pins.
I know.
So if you look through your issues of threads and you see big yellow-headed pins, it's because we've been using the office pins for photography.
But that kind of reminds me of something that I think it's important because all of us have such limited storage space. Let's just keep what we like to work with, and gift what we don't want to someone else, or donate it, or give it away, because life is too short to be working with a whole bunch of things that we don't like working with. And you're discouraged from working on projects and doing things that you love because you have these notions or fabrics or things that just are not appealing to you. So go for it. Just that helps you pare down, helps you improve your storage, and ultimately makes you happier.
Yeah.
I have a very difficult time letting go of things, of notions. And working at Threads, and we haven't been able to go this year, but in previous years, we went to many wonderful sewing experiences and shows.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've been exposed to so many interesting sewing inventions and tools and things from Japan and England, and completely new notions that people have developed. And so I have a collection of some pretty esoteric sewing notions, and I cannot let them go, even though I would be lucky if I used them, once every 2 years or something. Maybe someday I'll have a sewing notion museum. That's it.
There you go.
I've been trying not to be precious about, the little scraps and remnants left over after you've cut something out. I used to keep everything, but now I do try to trim my fabric down, get rid of all those little long string parts that hang off that are funny shapes and throw them away. But with interfacing, I am so stingy about it. I don't want to throw it away because it's relatively expensive, and, and it's narrow, and then you have to keep buying more. So now I do trim the interfacing after I've cut out all the little, facing pieces, and you have all those weird little funny crescent things that come out in between. Those I just trim off evenly, and I stick them in I have like a little shopping bag that sort of stands up near my cutting area, and I just kind of drop them in there. And so I have a whole bunch of small, irregularly shaped pieces of interfacing of all different weights and colors. And I've discovered that I really love that bag, because now anytime I need to reinforce something, there's just a little piece I just grab in there, and I'm more likely to just fuse a little bit here or there where I think that we might need some reinforcement in a garment. And then otherwise I might be too lazy to even cut it. I just kind of leave it, but at the end of a seam or something, if I need it, there it is. So, and then I feel like I'm not wasting all those little scraps.
Oh, that's such a smart idea. Well, we've actually come to the end of our time for this episode. It's been so fun talking with you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to have some forum threads at threadsmagazine.com, where you can go and see these tips and more tips about organizing and share your own ideas. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Follow Threads on social media and visit threadsmagazine.com to view show notes for this episode. While you're on the site, check out Threads Insider, our online membership with exclusive access to expert sewing techniques. Until next time, keep on sewing with Threads.
If you enjoy Sewing with Threads, then you'll love the Threads Insider membership. You'll get home delivery of the print magazine, as well as access to every back issue of Threads in our online archive. Plus, all of the videos, tutorial posts, projects, and pattern templates on our website. Visit threadsmagazine.com/insider to learn more.